today, EUINC, okay? So let's talk about Europe. And one of the things I want to start with here is looking into the media. There's a bunch of negative memes that have been posted on like the last years, right? So this has always been a thing. And I'm not saying that the memes by default are wrong. You know what I mean? Like, this is not what I'm trying to say here, you know? Especially this one, I fully fundamentally agree with, you know? And if you happen to be regular in Germany, you exactly know what this one is about. One thing that's like just getting a bit much is there's always like something negative. And this is like where it's getting a little bit like, I fully agree on the facts behind all of that. And I will get into this in a moment, you know, but there's almost like a negativity farming happening on Twitter right now, where you pretty much, if you post anything negative about Europe and just say like America is better, you get like 20 to 50K or like whatever, 1 to 5K likes for free. And this one is my favorite, actually. Like, shout out to Delian. Quick side note, big fan of him, actually. I have his merch and everything. I have nothing against him personally. Don't hate the player, hate the game. You know, it works in the algorithm, and I agree with some of the facts he's mentioning, okay? But some of this is just lazy farming. So he's basically, for example, here he's just arguing that a big conference, he means Slush in the Nordics, has to do like a dark room and everything. You know why? Because sustainability, you know, like socialism and like decline and deceleration and everything, right? The reality is they're fucking lasers. We need more space lasers launched from Europe. This is my main message, okay? Like, you cannot have lasers if the room is bright. You know, this is not like an office building. This is not like like, what the hell, you know? This is not like the Office TV show or something like this. This is meant to be cool as fuck. And they had like loudspeakers, they had lasers, they had everything. Like, if they had any concerns about their energy bill, it was definitely not like shown around their event. So like, this to me is a little bit like just lazy farming. This is also like this kind of line. Like, we have this all the time, like, hey, I went the streets and there was like a little hole, and like, tell me what this means about the European decline and all this kind of stuff. And again, like, it's not about the facts. Like, the facts we can discuss. This though is to me just lazy farming, and like, nothing against Max, like, don't hate the player, hate the game. This is just like done because it works. And big shout out here to Ole, because he's at least mentioning facts, you know? So there's a whole like general negativity, and in reality, like, the big message here is like Europe is like losing the race, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, we're falling more and more behind, and that's like, there's like no denying that behind that, and that needs to change. To me personally, it comes down to a very simple fact. We basically missed completely the Web 1 and Web 2 phase. Like, all of the big winners didn't happen in Europe, and I personally think it's because the equivalent companies that started in Europe didn't have quick enough acceleration locally. What does this mean? A good example is Tumblr. Like, meanwhile to Tumblr, there was like a company called Soup in Europe, you know, super popular, actually more popular around like hardcore early social media people. They struggled to get the same acceleration, not only like media reach, because like press doesn't like language differences, but which is for an online platform a little bit less of a problem, thankfully, but also funding, you know, and multiple other things. Like, just scaling in Europe is fundamentally harder. The main thing where this comes down to is the companies that are now big in Europe are just fundamentally older. And that's a huge issue. And the big delta here is actually, if you look at it, most of it is tech. It's like Web 1, Web 2 right now, deep tech and so on, you know, and that needs to change, period. Like, there's no way around. And the reason behind this is very, very simple. Like, innovation does no longer only happen in universities. Like, this is where the fundamental research happening. This is, we're like rock solid here. Like, we have some of the best AI research, computer vision, robotics research, quantum computing, and so on is actually happening in Europe. The problem is the actual afterwards stages, like the fast acceleration of that innovation is afterwards nowadays happening in big companies. Like, all of the big AI innovation is happening in companies like OpenAI, Meta, and Google, and so on. This is no longer happening on the university level, because it just cannot compete at that level as soon as you hit a certain inflection point. And we lack those companies. And if we lack those companies, we don't have the fundamental output of that innovation that we helped creating. And if we don't have these companies, we don't have the premium products. Without the premium products, we don't have the premium jobs. Without the premium jobs, we don't have premium lifestyle. And fundamentally, this is what it comes down to. Like, Europeans are very, very proud of having a very good quality of life. This is possible because we have companies that actually are strong enough to sustain this. And the problem we have in Europe is, classically, almost all politicians, when they say they are pro-business, what they actually mean is they are pro 2 to 5 companies in their country. Okay? they're actually like for the Siemens of the world, of the Volkswagen of the world, like these kind of big companies, they're trying to help them, promote them, create an ecosystem for them, and so on and so on. The problem is these companies are now like older and older and older and older. Here again, this is the easiest summary that I can show, you know. And the big problem we have here is the world is catching up. It's no longer Europe versus the States, you know. India is catching up. China is catching up. Like China is like, I will do like a bigger talk about China next year with a friend of mine who's a big expert on this. India as well. Like we are far off like the percentage growth, the GDP, that like anything, like, and GDP as a metric, like there's pro and cons, whatever, that's not the point. We are lagging behind and we are falling behind. And this is a huge issue. From my point of view, multiple countries in Europe, when it comes to startup, are a developing country right now. And we should like change into that mindset, unfortunately, because we need to act like developing countries. We need to make bold bets and bold changes. And this is kind of like where this whole thing is done. Cool. Now I know why Alex Jones gets like kind of like hyped up during his discussions, right? Like that's his like... Anyway.